Yo, what up guys, I'm Sammy and welcome back to the Soul Drop. In this video, we're going to be talking about the lightest basketball shoes that you can get right now. And of course, weight is pretty important. I feel like weight plus how the shoe feels, is it bulky or not, is what determines if I like a shoe or not, you know what I mean? For example, like a shoe that's super bulky, but more on the lighter side of things, is a Trayon 3, and I don't like playing in it because it's super bulky, even though it's not super heavy, right? But also, on the other hand, the AE1, which is extremely heavy, coming in at like 15.5 ounces, it is actually, I like playing that shoe because it's responsive, right? And it doesn't feel too bulky because nothing really protrudes out that much, you know? So weight is pretty important, and obviously I'm gonna try to tell you guys what shoe is with the weight, obviously, I'm going to tell you guys what the weight is and how heavy it is, but I'm going to try to tell you guys also if it's like a responsive shoe or not, you know? But yeah, I got 15 shoes, and yeah, the average weight of my shoes is around 12.5 ounces, and I did take the average of like both the left and right pairs of the shoe, and I got the weight. And put it on here, right, on this list. So 15 shoes. If you guys do want to cop any of these shoes, let's try to leave the link in the description box. And if you do choose to get any of these shoes, it does help me out if you do buy it from the link. So thank you guys so much for all the support as always. But let's get it started off with number 15, which is the Curry Splash 24, right? And it comes in at 12.1 ounces, which is actually a little bit heavier than I thought, because that shoe felt pretty light, you know what I mean, especially on cheaper shoes. And also, that's another thing, right? Cheaper shoes are usually super duper light because they lack tech. So a lot of these shoes are budget shoes. But anyways, there's number 15. It's not the most responsive shoe because the traction isn't the best, but and also the material is pretty thin, so it's not super supportive, but you do feel pretty fast in that shoe. But yeah, let's move on to number 14, which is the Tatum 2, and it comes at 12.05 ounces, which is a little bit disappointing because the Tatum 1 was like 10.8 ounces. So the Tatum 1, super duper light. It was one of the lightest shoes of last year. The Tatum 2, actually a good amount heavier, but it's a lot more supportive, right? So 12.05 ounces isn't super duper light, but it's a little bit lighter than average. But the traction isn't the best on dust, so just be careful with that. But overall, it's a pretty responsive shoe. And Jordan Brand is saying it's their lightest shoe in their basketball shoe lineup. So it's interesting. It's not super light though, you know what I mean? So there's number 14. Moving on to number 13, we got the Adidas Zap 1. So that's Dante DiVincenzo's signature shoe, and it's an amazing performer, and it comes in at 11.8 ounces, which is actually pretty dang light. So the Zap 1 has phenomenal cushion, you know what I mean? And like I said, a lot of these shoes are cheaper shoes because, you know, cheaper shoes lack tech and they tend to be lighter, but the Zap 1, it does not lack tech. The cushion is absolutely amazing, and the traction is absolutely amazing. It's top tier. So 11.8 ounces, you feel extremely responsive. The material is super duper thin as well. So yeah, the Zap 1, really, really nice. All right, moving on to number 12, we got, surprisingly, the Book 1. When I first saw that shoe, I was like, yo, that shoe is probably going to be super duper heavy. It's not, you know what I mean? Which surprised me. So 11.7 ounces, that's kind of crazy. And it doesn't feel super minimal though, you know what I mean? It does feel lightweight, but it doesn't feel super minimal because there's so much padding in the back of the shoe, which is very comfortable. I like that. But as far as like feeling very minimal and lightweight, I would say, you know, the Zap 1 feels more minimal and lightweight, but the Book 1 is still lightweight and a lot more plush and comfortable in the back of the shoe, right? So there is the Book 1. Moving on to number 11, we got the LeBron Witness 8 coming in at 11.65 ounces. So yeah, I mean, the LeBron Witness 8, it's pretty responsive because the traction is really good. But the cushion is responsive, but it is a little bit high up off the ground, and the material is overall supportive, but not the most supportive. So my foot does move around a little bit inside of the shoe, but for the most part, it's a lightweight shoe and pretty responsive. All right, moving on to number 10. We're gonna crack the top 10 right now, and we got the Li-Ning Speed 10 coming in at 11.6 ounces, right? So it's an extremely lightweight shoe. You know, the upper is super duper minimal. I'm looking over there because that's where the shoe is. But also the cushion is really nice. You know what I mean? You have a soft mesh stroller, which does improve the step and comfort. And the traction also is really nice. So yeah, it's a lightweight shoe that doesn't sacrifice cushion that much because, you know, like I said, budget shoes sacrifice cushion and sacrifice tech. for it to be lighter, right? But the Speed 10 doesn't. So yeah, it's a really responsive and lightweight shoe, which I do like. All right, moving on to number 9, we got the Nike Jaw 1 coming in at 11.4 ounces. Isn't that crazy? The Jaw 1 also, when you look at it, doesn't look that light. You know what I mean? It actually looks kind of bulky. It does feel a little bit bulkier than some of the other shoes on this list, however, because it does have a good amount of padding in the back of the shoe and also for the tongue. But it's a really responsive shoe. The traction is really good. The cushion is responsive as well. It's not super mushy or anything. It also support's great, right? So the Jaw 1, 11.4 ounces. Moving on to number 8, we got the Nike GT Hustle 2 coming in at 11.25 ounces. That's super duper light, you know what I mean? And the GT Hustle 2 is extremely light and extremely minimal. There's pretty much no padding in the upper, right? It's a really, really thin material. However, it's not super supportive, right? And also the traction isn't the best. So because of that, it doesn't feel super responsive, like for example, like the Zap 1. But the GT Hustle 2 is extremely lightweight and very minimal feeling. So there's number 8. Moving on to number 7, we got the Curry 11 coming in at 11.15 ounces, which is extremely lightweight. And that's pretty much all Currys, you know what I mean? So all the Currys that I weight are around that weight. So yeah, I don't want to put a whole bunch of Curry Flotros in this list. So I just put like the Curry 11 there. And yeah, I mean, all Under Armour shoes with Flo are extremely lightweight, you know what I mean? With the Flo compound, like the Flo foam is extremely lightweight, it's low density. There's no rubber outsole, which reduces a lot of the weight. And also the upper usually doesn't have that much padding and it's usually really thin. So yeah, the Currys, very, very lightweight, very minimal feeling, and also extremely responsive, especially if you're playing on a clean court. All right, moving on to number 6, we got the Nike Giannis Immortality 3s coming in at 11.1 ounces. I mean, yeah, like I said, a lot of cheap shoes on this list, and the cushion is pretty lackluster. It's pretty stiff. It's kind of booty cheeks, you know. But it's a pretty responsive shoe overall. You know, traction overall is pretty solid. The cushion is low to the ground and responsive. The upper is extremely thin. There's not a whole lot of padding in the back of the shoe either. So yeah, it's a really lightweight and minimal feeling shoe that feels overall pretty responsive. Moving on to number 5, we got the Curry Spawn Flo, which is 11 ounces, right? So yeah, just like the Curry 11 and all the other Curry Flotros, the Spawn Flotro is a little bit lighter because I feel like the mesh material that they're using is just really, really lightweight. So yeah, 11 ounces is extremely lightweight, and also you feel extremely responsive and quick when you're playing in the Spawn Flotro. All right, moving on to number 4, we got the Nike Zoom GT Cut 3, which was a pretty big surprise, you know what I mean? But if you guys didn't know, Zoom X, they use Zoom X in a lot of the running shoes, and Nike's running shoes are one of the lightest shoes. Like, they usually make their running shoes extremely light, especially compared to a lot of the other shoe companies that make running shoes as well, right? But that has to do with Zoom X. Zoom X is a really low density foam, and yeah, the traction also really, really nice. The upper super duper thin. There's no padding at all in the upper, so it feels extremely lightweight, very minimal, and also really responsive. All right, moving on to number 3, we got the GT Cut Academy coming in at 10.75, so it's just a tiny bit lighter than the GT Cut 3. But yeah, GT Cut Academy, it's a budget shoe. It lacks tech for the cushion. It's just Renew foam. Renew foam is also low density, but it's not amazing. It's soft, it's comfortable most of the time, but it does bottom out pretty quickly. But overall, it's a pretty responsive cushioning setup. The traction is really good. It's top tier traction. The upper is pretty minimal, you know what I mean? So it's a really lightweight and very responsive shoe. All right, moving on to number 2. If you guys didn't know, I don't like this shoe though. This shoe is not nice. I had a lot of problems with this shoe, but it's super lightweight, so there it is, right? So we got the Adi Zero Select 2.0 coming in at 10.55 ounces, which is extremely light, you know what I mean? But not the best shoe. You know, the traction is kind of it's not good, you know what I mean? Especially if you're playing on a dusty court. The cushion also is super low to the ground. I guess I do like the cushioning setup overall, you know, but on harder impacts, it's not the best, right? But then like the upper is so thin and there's no padding, but then like the fit, you know, my foot was moving inside of the shoe a little bit, and also the overall support of the upper wasn't great, and I had a lot of heel slippage in that shoe. So I did not like playing that shoe really at all. But moving on to number 1, drum roll please. you guys probably didn't know. So yeah, it is the Wade Flash by way of Wade, and it comes in at 10.5 ounces, guys. Extremely light. Extremely light. So it's one of the lightest and most minimal feeling shoes, and also the most well ventilated shoe I've ever tried, or I've tried in a while. You know what I mean? See, that upper is extremely thin, and there's just so much airflow in the toe box, also for the tongue, like on the bottom of the tongue, also on the sides of the shoe, you know what I mean? And also the traction, I've been playing in that shoe, really good cushion, is low to the ground, but also they don't skimp out on the actual, I guess they skimp out a little bit on the tech because it's cheaper, it's like $100, but they have a soft mesh strobe board, which does improve the cushion a lot, especially comparing to a lot of the other shoes on this list that have crappy cushion because it lacks tech, because it's a budget shoe, you know what I mean? Like the Immortality 3, the LeBron Witness 8, you know what I mean? But the actual Wade Flash has really nice cushion, you know? So yeah, the Wade Flash, if you want an extremely lightweight shoe, which also still has really nice, or not super nice, but still pretty nice cushion, and that also feels really responsive, and you can feel quick in, and has really good ventilation. I feel like the Wade Flash is one of the best shoes on this list, you know what I mean? If you want something extremely lightweight and minimal, but also responsive. So anyways, that about concludes this video. Did you guys expect this? And also, as far as the actual weight goes, it can be plus or minus, I guess, like 0.2 ounces, you know what I mean? The ranking isn't set in stone as far as like the overall number goes, probably because I'm sure there's like a difference in weight, plus or minus 0.2 ounces, which is pretty normal, you know what I mean? But this is just from what I've weighed with my shoes. But anyways, tell us what you guys think of this list. Were you guys shocked? Were you not? And also, if you guys do want to cop any of these shoes, I try to leave the link in the description box. But that's it. Thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you guys in the next one.